I always thought my wedding day would be perfect white flowers, soft music, and the man I loved waiting at the end of the aisle. But instead, it became the moment my entire life shattered and then transformed forever. I'm Hazel Carter, and just minutes before I was supposed to say I do, my father-in-law lifted a champagne glass, pointed at my dad, and laughed. "Look at him," he sneered. "A poor old man at $1 million wedding. Hazel, you should have warned us." The guests laughed. My groom said nothing. And my dad, my gentle, hard-working dad, just stood there with his eyes lowered, holding a small gift he made for me. In that instant, humiliation burned through me. But beneath it, something else stirred. Something sharp, something dangerous. Because the man they mocked, the poor old man they ridiculed, was hiding a billion-dollar secret that would soon flip their entire world upside down. I'm Hazel Carter, 27 years old, and I never imagined I'd end up marrying into a family like the Whitmores. My groom, Evan Whitmore, was the golden boy of our university, tall, charming, the kind of man everyone expected to end up with someone of equal wealth and status. Not a nurse from a modest neighborhood, not a girl raised by a single father who fixed cars for a living. But Evan loved me. Or at least, I thought he did. From the moment I met his parents, Richard and Meredith Whitmore, I felt a quiet chill under all their polished smiles. They spoke to me like I was a charity case. They spoke about my dad like he was background noise. Still, I ignored the warning signs, because I wanted to believe love was enough. On the morning of the wedding, my dad showed up earlier than everyone else. He wore the only suit he owned, dark gray, slightly frayed at the cuffs, pressed carefully by his own hands. His shoes were old but polished, and he held a tiny gift box against his chest as if it were fragile. "You look beautiful, Hazel," he whispered, eyes shining with pride. "Just like your mother used to." I nearly cried right then. But love and pride weren't the dominant emotions at this wedding. Judgment was. As soon as the Whitmore guests spotted him, I heard whispers. "Is that her father? He looks so ordinary. Did he walk here?" Even the wedding planner kept trying to move him to a corner, as if he were blocking the decor. Then Richard arrived. He didn't greet my dad. He didn't even look at him as a person. Instead, he scanned him up and down, smirked, and muttered to Evan loud enough for everyone around us to hear. "Your father-in-law looks like he came straight from a garage." Hot embarrassment crawled up my neck. My dad heard it. Of course he did. But he just smiled politely. That same tired smile he used whenever life pushed him around. Evan nudged my arm. "Just ignore it," he whispered. "Ignore it?" As if humiliation were a small inconvenience. I stood between the two worlds I belonged to. The world that raised me, humble and real, and the world I was about to marry into, glittering and cruel. And deep inside, I felt the first crack forming. A quiet warning. This wedding was never meant to be. The ceremony hadn't even started, yet the humiliation had already reached its peak. Guests were milling around, champagne glasses clinking, photographers flashing from every corner. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to focus on the vows I had practiced 100 times. But all I could see was my dad, standing alone near the back, clutching the tiny gift box like a lifeline. Then Richard cleared his throat loudly. I froze. He raised his champagne glass, tapping it for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "before we begin, I'd like to propose a little pre-ceremony toast." My stomach dropped. He pointed straight at my dad. "I just want to say, it's incredibly brave of Hazel's father to attend a luxury wedding while dressed like that." He laughed. "Really, sir, thrift store chic must be back in style." A wave of laughter rolled through the crowd. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears. My dad lowered his gaze, shoulders shrinking inward as if trying to disappear. "Dad," I whispered, stepping toward him. Before I could reach him, Meredith leaned in toward her group of friends and said in a voice dripping with condescension, "Well, I suppose every wedding needs a charity guest. It adds realism." More laughter. Something snapped inside me. I stormed toward Richard. "Stop," I hissed. "Right now." He raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? You're insulting my father." "Insulting?" Richard repeated mockingly. "I'm stating facts. Look at him, Hazel. This is $1 million wedding. And he shows up looking like—" "Richard!" My voice shook with rage. "Enough." My dad quickly stepped between us. "Hazel," he murmured, placing a trembling hand on my arm. Please, not today. Why not today? I shot back. You don't deserve this. But he shook his head. I'm fine. Only when is given the life. Wade, he wasn't fine. I knew that. His eyes were glossy. His jaw clenched in pain. He was enduring this for me because he didn't want to ruin my wedding. Evan finally approached, looking irritated. Honey, please don't make a scene, he whispered. It's just a joke. A joke? I stared at him. That was your father mocking mine. Evan rubbed his forehead. Hazel, you know my parents have a certain humor. Just let it go. Let it go. That phrase again. I turned to look at my dad and the sight broke my heart. He was gripping the small gift box so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Richard chuckled. Honestly, Hazel, you should be grateful your father even showed up. I thought he'd be too busy fixing tires in whatever rundown shop he works at. My dad flinched. That was it. I stepped forward, voice trembling with fury. If you insult my dad one more time, Richard. He smirked. Or what, sweetheart? You'll cancel the wedding? A strange quiet filled my chest. A clarity. A realization that this wasn't just cruelty. This was a preview of my future. A future where my father was always going to be looked down on. A future where Evan would always choose silence. A future where I would be forced to swallow disrespect because I married into the wrong family. My voice dropped to a whisper. Don't tempt me. Richard laughed again, oblivious. But my dad looked at me with something new in his eyes. Not fear. Not shame. But a warning. Something was coming. Something big. And this mockery was only the beginning. The ceremony music began playing. The kind that was supposed to sound romantic but now felt painfully hollow. Guests began taking their seats. The wedding planner signaled for me to walk down the aisle, but I couldn't move. All I could focus on was the small gift box in my dad's trembling hands. Before I stepped forward, he caught my wrist gently. Hazel, before everything starts, this is for you. He placed the box in my hand. His palms were calloused, warm, familiar. I slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a delicate silver locket, polished, simple, and shaped like a heart. I opened it. My breath hitched. On one side was a tiny photo of me at age 5, sitting on my dad's shoulders, both of us covered in oil stains from his workshop. On the other was a picture of Mom, smiling, radiant, alive. A soft gasp escaped my lips. You said, Dad whispered, when you were little, that when you grew up, you wanted to be just like me. His voice cracked, just slightly. I never forgot that. Emotion crashed over me like a tidal wave. Tears blurred my vision. Dad, my voice trembled. Why didn't you give this to me earlier? He smiled, the kind of gentle, tired smile that only fathers who've carried the world on their backs can manage. Because today is the day you needed it most. I hugged the locket to my chest, feeling the metal warm against my skin. My dad reached out to wipe a tear off my cheek but froze when a familiar, venomous voice cut through the air behind us. A locket? Richard scoffed loudly. That's the gift? Not even diamonds? My God, Hazel. I thought your father could at least pretend he isn't broke. Laughter erupted again, sharper, crueler. My dad stiffened. Richard, please, I begged, my voice breaking. Stop. But he stepped closer, looking directly at my dad. You know, sir, he sneered. If you couldn't afford something nicer, you could have just stayed home. You don't exactly blend in here. My dad bowed his head, and in that moment, I watched his pride collapse just a little. It was a sight I would never forget. His fingers tightened on the empty lid of the gift box. He blinked quickly, trying to hide the raw hurt pooling in his eyes. I'm sorry, he murmured quietly to me. I shouldn't have come. His words stabbed through my chest like a blade. No, I whispered fiercely, grabbing his arm. Don't say that. Don't ever say that. He looked at me and there was something strange, almost conflicted, in his expression. A mixture of pain and restraint, as if he were holding on to a truth he wasn't ready to reveal. Hazel, he said softly, this wedding, these people, none of it matters. You and I, we know who we are. I frowned, confused. What was he trying to tell me? Then he added, almost under his breath, one day, they'll understand the truth. The truth? Before I could ask, the wedding planner tapped my shoulder. It's time, Hazel. Walk. Now. I took a shaky breath and turned toward the aisle. But as I lifted my foot, I had no idea that this tiny, simple gift, this silver locket, was the first domino in a chain of events that would expose everything: my father's pain, his past, and the billion-dollar secret he'd been hiding my entire life. The moment I stepped onto the aisle, the music swelled: soft violins, gentle piano, but my chest felt tight, suffocating. Every step felt wrong. Every smile from the guests felt like a stab. At the altar, Evan waited for me. He should have looked happy, relieved, even. Instead, he looked irritated, as if my pain was an inconvenience. "You took long enough," he whispered sharply as I reached him. "Can you please stop acting emotional? People are watching." I stared at him. Was this really the man I thought I would spend my life with? Before I could answer, Richard's voice boomed across the hall. "Well, are we finally starting? Some of us have important work to return to, not fixing old cars for spare change." The guests laughed. Again. My breath hitched. I glanced at my dad, standing alone, shoulders trembling, eyes glossy. My heart cracked. "Hazel," Evan whispered urgently, "don't react. Just smile." Smile? While my father was being humiliated? I turned to him slowly. "Do something." "Do what?" Evan hissed. "My dad is just teasing." "This is not teasing," I shot back. "This is cruelty." Evan's jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." "No." I was finally reacting. Behind me, Richard muttered loudly, "Honestly, I'm shocked Hazel's father didn't arrive on a bicycle. That suit looks older than the church." Someone snorted. Someone else whispered, "Is that really her family?" Wow. I felt something inside me tear. At that exact moment, my dad lifted his eyes. And the look on his face. Defeat. Pain. Shame he didn't deserve. It broke me. I stepped back from Evan. He frowned. "What are you doing?" I reached for the microphone on the stand. "Hazel," Evan hissed, "don't you dare." Too late. The mic screeched as I pulled it up. The hall fell silent. My voice came out shaking, but strong enough to echo through the room. "This wedding is off." Gasps. Murmurs. A woman in the front row dropped her bouquet. Evan grabbed my wrist. "Hazel, stop this. You're embarrassing me." I ripped my hand away. "No, Evan, you embarrassed me. Your family humiliated my father in front of everyone." Richard laughed. "Oh, come on, are you really ending your wedding because of him?" I turned to face him fully. "Yes, because he raised me. Because he sacrificed everything for me. Because he is a better man than anyone in this room." The guests whispered. Some looked shocked, others ashamed. Meredith stepped forward. "This is childish, Hazel. Apologize to the family and we can continue." "Apologize?" I repeated, stunned. "To the people who mocked my dad for being poor?" Richard scoffed. "That's what he is, isn't he?" My voice shook with fury. "No. What he is decent, proud, honest. Everything your wealth could never buy." A ripple of shock shot through the room. Evan's face twisted. "Hazel, don't throw your future away over this." "My future?" I whispered. "My future is not with a man who watches his father bully mine and says nothing." Silence. Complete silence. Then came the final blow. From the back of the hall, my dad's voice, soft, trembling, rose above the quiet. "Honey, if you want this marriage, I'll stay. I'll take whatever they say. I don't want to ruin your happiness." His words broke what little remained of my restraint. I turned back to the crowd, my voice rising. "You insulted the wrong man, and I won't stand here and pretend everything is fine. Come in, is it can stare?" I tossed the bouquet onto the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "I'm leaving," I said, breath unsteady. "And my father is coming with me." I walked down the aisle, my heels clicking like thunder. Behind me, Richard shouted, "Go ahead. Run off with your broke father. You two are nothing." My dad flinched. I felt rage burn so hot it could have turned the hall to ash. I took his hand. "Screw them," I whispered. "We're going home." The doors slammed behind us. And for the first time that day, I could finally breathe. Little did I know that the world outside those doors was about to learn just how wrong Richard Whitmore was. The broke old man he mocked wasn't just somebody. He was someone powerful enough to destroy the Whitmores with a single truth. The ride home was painfully quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the heavy, suffocating silence of two people holding back everything they wanted to say. I kept my eyes on the road. Dad kept his eyes on his hands. I replayed every moment of the wedding disaster. The laughter, the insults, Richard's voice taunting my dad like he was dirt beneath his shoes. Finally, as we pulled into the driveway of our small house, I broke. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Dad, I failed you. I should have protected you." He shook his head gently. "No, Hazel. You protected yourself. But you were humiliated because of me." Dad closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, there was something in them I had never seen before. Not sadness, not defeat, but resolve. "Sit down," he said softly, gesturing toward the kitchen table. I frowned. "Dad?" He opened a drawer, pulled out a thick, worn leather folder, and placed it in front of me. My heartbeat quickened. "What is this?" "Everything," he murmured. I opened it, and my world tilted. Inside were documents, official, notarized, stamped things I barely understood at first glance. A bank statement showing numbers so large they didn't feel real. Ownership certificates of several companies. Stock portfolios bursting with blue chip and tech giants. Property deeds spanning multiple states. A valuation sheet listing an amount that made my breath catch in my throat. "Dad, this can't be real," I whispered. But his expression told me it was. He sat down opposite me, fingers interlocked, shoulders straightened in a way I rarely saw. "I've been hiding this for a very long time," he said quietly. My throat tightened. "Hiding what, Dad?" He let out a slow breath. "The fact that I'm wealthy. Very wealthy." I stared at him, stunned. "Wealthy? Dad, this is more than wealthy. This is—" I flipped through more pages, hands trembling. "A fortune, Dad. This is a fortune." He nodded. Then finally, he explained. "When your mother died, she left behind a small inheritance. Nothing extraordinary, but I invested it." He smiled sadly. "At first because I wanted to give you a future. Later, because I needed a purpose." He leaned back, eyes drifting somewhere far away. "I spent nights reading investment books while you slept beside me on the couch. I studied markets. I bought stocks when everyone else said they were worthless. I kept my life simple because I didn't want money to shape the way you grew up. It's—" Tears welled in my eyes. "But Dad, why hide something like this?" "Because I didn't want you choosing friends or love based on my wealth. I didn't want you to become someone people used for money. I wanted you to see hearts, not bank accounts." He hesitated. "And I wanted to see their hearts too." I felt a cold realization wash over me. "So, today, at the wedding," he nodded slowly. "Today, I saw them clearly. I saw the people who were supposed to become your family mock me for being poor. I watched them insult the man they thought you were stuck with." His voice hardened, quiet but fierce. "And I let them, because I wanted to see who they truly were." I pressed a hand to my mouth, shocked. He continued, softer now. "But, Hazel, I won't let anyone treat you the way they treated me. Not when I have the power to stop it." Power. The word hung between us like a spark waiting to ignite. I looked at my father, not the tired mechanic, not the man in the frayed suit, but someone else entirely. Someone capable of ruining the Whitmore's empire with a single decision. And for the first time, I understood why he didn't flinch at Richard's insults. He wasn't powerless. He was controlled, strategic, silent, and far, far more dangerous than they ever imagined. "Dad," I whispered, voice shaking. "What are you going to do?" He closed the folder gently, meeting my eyes with a calmness that sent chills down my spine. What I should have done years ago. For the first time in my life, I saw my father not as the quiet, humble mechanic who raised me, but as a man with a mind sharper than any businessman I had ever met. He wasn't angry. He wasn't emotional. He was focused, deadly focused. "Hazel," he said, opening his laptop on the kitchen table. "The Whitmores think wealth defines worth. Let's show them how wrong they are." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He slid the laptop toward me. The screen displayed financial statements, ownership charts, portfolios. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. I squinted. "Isn't that Whitmore Hospitality Group?" He nodded, and then dropped the bomb. "I've been investing in their competitors for years. Quietly, carefully. I own controlling influence in 2 of their rival hotel chains." My jaw dropped. "So when Richard mocked me today," Dad continued calmly, He was insulting someone who can bury his company with a few signatures. I inhaled sharply. Dad, are you going to destroy them? He rested his hands on mine. No. I'm going to give them a lesson they will never forget without sinking to their level. The next morning, he met with his lawyers, 3 top-tier attorneys, who greeted him with the respect of someone far above the Whitmores' league. Mr. Carter, one said, shall we proceed with the board intervention? Intervention? I stared at him. Hazel, Dad explained gently. The Whitmores have debts, weak management, and an outdated business model. Their company has been vulnerable for years. A push from the right direction could topple them. But I thought you didn't want revenge, I whispered. He smiled. This isn't revenge. This is protection. He leaned closer. If I do nothing, they'll continue treating you the way they treat me. If I act, they will think twice before ever opening their mouths against us again. Another Salen Timolderd in Endresen on the market from Lake Formosted. The plan unfolded faster than I could process. Within 24 hours, Dad held private meetings with rival investors, activated voting rights in competitor companies, quietly acquired additional shares in Whitmore Hospitality, filed a request for board review, scheduled an emergency shareholders meeting involving Richard. I watched in awe. This wasn't luck. This was strategy. 3 days later, we walked into a sleek boardroom overlooking the city skyline. Richard and Meredith were already there. When Richard saw us, he burst out laughing. You've got to be kidding. Why is he here? He jabbed a finger at my father. This is a shareholders meeting, not a charity event. Dad didn't even blink. Good to see you too, Richard. The attorneys took their seats. A senior board member cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore, your presence is required because a major shareholder has filed a motion. Richard smirked. Let me guess you people want more money? The board member hesitated. No. The motion is to review your leadership. Richard's smile faltered. What? The board member nodded toward my father. The motion was filed by Mr. Carter. Richard paled. Him? He's not even a shareholder. That's... Dad opened a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were certificates. Proof. Ownership. Leverage. Richard's face drained of color. How did you acquire this many shares? He whispered hoarsely. Dad leaned back, calm as ever. I've owned them for years, Richard. Quietly, patiently, watching you topple your own empire. Meredith clutched her pearls, horrified. Richard's lips trembled with rage. You planned this. Dad met his eyes, voice steady. I planned nothing until the moment you mocked me in front of hundreds of people. Silence. A silence thick enough to choke the room. Now, my father said, folding his hands, you will treat my daughter with respect. Or, I proceed with the vote to remove you. Richard swallowed hard. You wouldn't. Dad smiled. Try me. After the board meeting, everything shifted, like the entire axis of my life had quietly tilted into a new direction. Richard avoided my father's eyes as he begrudgingly muttered, I'm sorry. The apology was thin, brittle, and empty. But it wasn't for him. It was for me. Dad didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't lift his chin like a man who had just cornered his enemy. He simply nodded once and said, We're done here. And just like that, the Whitmore's power over my life dissolved. For days after, my phone buzzed with messages from Evan. Hazel, please answer. We can fix this. I didn't mean anything. My dad was out of line. Hazel, I love you. I stared at every message, expressionless. Finally, he showed up in person. Standing on our front porch, hair messy, eyes red. Hayes, I made a mistake, he said. I froze. I didn't know what to do. You did nothing, I replied quietly. That's the problem. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. I needed you to defend my father. Not because he's poor, not because he's old, but because he's a good man. The best man I know. I know, Evan whispered, voice breaking. Please, give me another chance. I shook my head. Your silence spoke louder than your apology. I know. It's a catacomedy become it. He bowed his head. So this is it? Yes, I said softly. This is it. He left with tears in his eyes. But I didn't cry. Because for the first time, I wasn't losing something. I was choosing myself. Days turned into weeks. Life settled. Dad and I spent quiet mornings drinking coffee, afternoons fixing things around the house, evenings talking about Mom, something we hadn't done in years. One night, as the sun dipped below the trees, he sat beside me on the porch and said, "You deserve someone who values your family, Hazel. Someone who's proud to stand beside you." I rested my head on his shoulder. "I don't know who that is yet," I whispered. "You will," he said. "And when you find him, he'll respect me because he respects you." Warmth bloomed in my chest. I didn't need a wedding. I didn't need a fancy last name. I didn't need a man who couldn't defend what mattered. I needed peace. And for the first time, I had it. A new beginning didn't start with a marriage. It started with walking away from one. People always ask me what it felt like, canceling my wedding, walking away from the Whitmores, finding out my father was a billionaire. But none of those moments define me. What defines me is the moment I saw my dad stand there in that wedding hall, humble, quiet, alone, and realized how easily people judge worth by wealth, not character. That was the day I learned something unshakable. If someone doesn't respect your family, they'll never respect you. The Whitmores never cared about my dad because he didn't look rich. They didn't know he spent nights fixing engines and saving pennies so I could go to school. They didn't know he lived without for years so I could have enough. They didn't know the calluses on his hands were the reason I grew up safe. And honestly, they never deserved to know. What mattered wasn't the billions he hid, but the values he lived by. Love without pride, sacrifice without recognition, strength without cruelty. He taught me that dignity is not something money can buy or take away. Walking away from that wedding wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything, of choosing myself, of protecting my father the way he protected me, of learning that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the people who don't value you. Today, when I wear the little silver locket he gave me, the one Richard mocked, I don't see a cheap gift. I see the truth. I see the man who gave me everything. I see the childhood he fought to protect. I see the daughter he raised to stand tall. The world mocked my dad for being poor, but in the end, he was the richest man in the room. And I was proud, so proud, to be his daughter.